Awesome.
Well, so glad to be with you today, Dar.
Thank you.
So what did you go get to drink?
Um, I got myself some soda water.
Oh, nice. Is
Yeah,
that
I use
standard morning drink?
um it's it's what I drink because I need to drink water.
Yeah.
So I used to love Coke, but Coca-Cola, by the way. And but at some point, I can't handle the sugar anymore, and but I hate drinking water,
Hmm.
and I don't know why, but I just started drinking soda water. I'm like, okay, it's got the bubbles,
There you
makes me
go.
feel happy. So that's what I do now.
Well, that's great. Well, welcome everybody. This is our third in our series of COVID-19 response, Women in Church Planning, coming to you from Parakaleo. We're here with Dar, and we're going to get started in just a few minutes. So we'll just kind of like casually banter for a little bit while we're waiting for people to come on. So
Hopefully cleverly too.
yeah. So Dar, the first time that I met you was virtually like this. I still haven't met you in person, yet I feel like I know you. Um, I had just gotten certified as a Parakaleo leader. This was back in January, and I was in the what we call the Parakaleo leadership community. So we were on a Zoom together, I think, and you had this cute little dog, and I was thinking about getting a dog, and I think like seeing that dog like put me over the edge, and we eventually got one. So tell us about your dog.
Good to know I'm a good influence. I've actually got her. Hold on, let me see if I can catch her. Oh, she was taking a nap.
So cute. What's her
So
name?
this is Abby, which is short for Anubis. So
Aw.
she used to be all black. And when we first saw her, my kids said, "Oh my goodness, she looks like a little jackal. We should
Aw.
call her Anubis." So
She's
and then we just called her Abby for short.
how old is she?
She is, oh my goodness, maybe 8 or 9 at this point. So she's got a lot of gray around. She used to be a lot darker.
Aw.
And
And so
she's a sweetie.
tell us about the craziest thing that your dog does.
Um, Craziest thing, well, she's actually pretty. Oh, let me put her back down. She's pretty chill now. She just likes to hang out, on a pillow and sleep behind me or something like that. But I do remember when she was a puppy and we were potty training her, and being in an apartment, we have what's called potty pads.
Oh
So you
yeah.
just designate a place in your apartment and she knows where to go. And at some point, I realized that we had a magical dog
Uh-huh.
because she would poop rainbows. And I was like, why does she have rainbow poop? And I couldn't figure it out. And I was like, I was like, is it the food? We were trying to, and finally, I
Uh-huh.
just so happened to be cleaning underneath our big, what's it called? Uh, Living room. What's that called? The living room table that's in the
Oh,
coffee
like
table.
coffee table?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was cleaning under the coffee table. And at the time, our kids were younger and we were homeschooling. So we just have, school supplies everywhere. And I realized, I looked underneath that she had stolen crayons. She had been chewing up all the crayons underneath, our coffee table. And that's why she had rainbow poops.
That is
So,
crazy. I explained it. Well, let's go ahead and get started. We just want to welcome everyone to our Parakaleo Facebook Live event. This is the first out of 3 events that we're doing today. So we're so excited about that. So my name is Denine Blevins. I'm the Executive Director of Parakaleo as of 8 weeks ago. Parakaleo is a global ministry that values, supports, and trains women in church planning. So we found that women often carry much of the practical and the relational burden of church planning, yet they very rarely have the support to do that kind of work. So church planning is hard. So we help women apply the truth and the beauty of the gospel from head to heart so that they can navigate the challenges that they face. I mean, we really believe that this work is one of the most strategic things that we can do in the work of church planning. When you have healthy leaders, you have healthy churches, and that helps with flourishing communities. So today we're going to be, throughout the day, I'm going to be interviewing 4 women in church planning from around the world, and Dara is one of them. So this morning we're bringing in Dara from Malaysia virtually. She is one of our Parakaleo trainers in Kuala Lumpur. And so welcome, Dar. I would love for you to just start by telling us just a little bit about who you are.
Oh, yeah. So, hi, from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. My name is Dar, and we've been living in Kuala Lumpur, my family, for over 10 years now. I think we came here in 2008. So that's 12 years.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
not
Yeah.
really good at math. But I was actually born and raised in Indonesia. So I'm half Indo, half Filipina. So I do speak Bahasa Melayu. I also speak Bahasa Indonesia, but English is my first language because I went to international schools and spent actually about 12 years in US, where I had married my white husband whom I'd met when I was in grade school. We'd grown up together and he got me my green card. We went to the US. We had 4 kids in 5 years, not
Wow.
intentionally. And then in 2008, we came back to Asia to partner with a church here, actually. So
Oh,
that's
that's
where I come from. And that's why I've got more of an American accent now.
okay. Oh, that's awesome. Well, would you greet anyone who may be watching in your native language? Would you say something to them?
Oh, well, my native language is actually English. So I'm like, hey, but selamat malam. That's good evening.
Thanks.
That's about I can as much as I can talk right now. I need another language person to talk with me to sound
Yeah, that
better.
makes sense. Okay. So, as you know, Dar, one of the things that we've been trying to do is just to find out from women in church planning how the coronavirus has affected them personally, their church plants, their communities. You and I talked with a friend of mine a couple of weeks ago that is in the epicenter of the virus in our country in New York, and how she and some of her friends were actually directly impacted by that. And so we realized that people are being affected in different levels to different degrees, but we've all experienced some sense of loss, some sense of trauma as a result of it. And so our goal with Parakaleo is to come alongside you, help you put language around what you're experiencing, normalize it, and help you move forward. So Dar, I would love to know first of all, how did church planning become a part of your life?
That is a really good question. If you'd asked me if I would be ever involved in church planting, I don't know, maybe even 20 years ago, I would have said no. Um, that said, we did come to Malaysia, to be in partnership with a church. And we were part of a church plant in 2010 in a suburb of Kuala Lumpur. And at some point, we actually ended up having to transition out. Our third child, our son, um, he's autistic. And so we needed to move closer into the city for him to be able to attend a special needs learning center. So we kind of moved out of our community, moved into the city, and which meant that we were driving every week out to the suburbs for worship service. Um, and that, I could feel that loss of community during that time. And it was kind of in that time that our senior pastor for City Discipleship Presbyterian Church here, um, he and my husband just started dreaming about having a church plant in the city. And we were fine with coming in as support because we had come in part of support for the first, the church plant in the suburbs, and my husband was the worship director at the time. So I was like, yeah, we'll do that. We just need to find someone. And after a couple of years, our senior pastor is like, you know what? I think, and he, just gestured to my husband, Ian. He's like, I think you're the guy. I think this is what God is calling you to. So from there, I went from like a certain amount of enthusiasm to, oh, and, because being part of music and worship and the arts, I knew that part, but to actually be a church planter's wife and a pastor's wife was something I actually reluctantly got into. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I love that idea of being I don't love that idea, but that idea of being a reluctant church planning spouse, which is, I think, how you described yourself in your bio. For those of you out there who are watching, Just give us a thumbs up or a smiley face or a sad face if you're a part of a church plant right now, whether you're the church planting spouse, maybe you're a single woman that's in leadership at your church, maybe you're the senior, you're the planter of a church. We'd love to hear from you and just kind of hear from your experiences. So how did you end up getting connected with Parakaleo?
Yeah, so my husband ended up going to a kind of a training and assessment workshop, or I guess it was a month-long training thing with City Asia, Asia Pacific, and our senior pastors and leadership had sent him there. And as part of their 4-week intensive, they had invited the wives to come out for 1 week. So I found myself in Singapore, where they were going to be in partnership with Parakaleo to do the first basic intensive in Singapore in 2014. And again, I came dragging my feet. I could find all kinds of reasons of, why did I need to leave? My husband had been gone for 3 weeks already. I had 4 kids. I was homeschooling at the time. So I did come with a rather large chip on my shoulder. And it might have been evident to everybody. But, really, the thought of spending 5 days with women who were church women, and just, I had an idea of what that would look like, and it didn't sound fun to me. But it ended up after like the first day, standing back and then hearing just that permission to, to share or to not share, to drop the waterline, to come as you are, was such a beautiful invitation, because it wasn't about performance. I wasn't there to be assessed. And I just found myself, in this, I think it was about 15 women. We were from about 5 different countries. And to see everyone, just their faces light up, when we started talking about the gospel, which we all knew in our heads, but we just had never really known how to practice it. So we knew it, but we didn't know how to practice it. And just to be equipped with these new tools. And it was actually a paradigm shift for me, because I had grown up in the church all my life, but, I had, didn't have a good relationship with the church as much as I loved it. I always felt like I was on the outside, but this was like a language I could understand, and just the freedom of being who I am and coming to God as I am. So that was like a paradigm shift. It was the beginning of a healing journey, actually, for me, just healing with my relationship with the church, healing from my own story, because I had abuse in my life. I had, I had emotional and mental illness in my life, to really see that, God uses me as I am, so I can afford to be curious to see what he brings me into, has been amazing. And I just started getting involved with anything I could with Parakaleo. I volunteered I was like, do you need an intern? I'll come as an intern. And at some point, it just ended up being certified as a trainer, and doing leadership and mentoring here in our city. And I'm so thankful for that, because it really did give me a new love for God's people, which I think I used to be so fearful of the church.
I love that, Dara. I love that. Well, I'm so thankful that God brought you into the ministry. I remember listening to the webinar that you and Yutako, who's another one of our trainers in Japan, and just the way that you both shared from your heart, what the gospel how the gospel had transformed your own lives, and just to hear you train other women, it was just such a beautiful thing. We'd love for those of you viewing, if you are familiar with Parakaleo, would you just let us know, like, what was your first taste of Parakaleo? Was it an event? If you've been to a training intensive, one of our 3 training intensives that we offer, let us know what you've done, and or just what you'd like to do. What are you interested in doing? I know for me, I was church planning in New York City. I was a single woman and helping on kind of one of the core members of a team. And I heard about Parakaleo from someone giving a testimony. And I went to one of the founders, Sherry Thomas, and I begged her to let me in. I was like, I think this is just for the wives of church planners, but I need this too. And they did. Yeah. I was in a group, Christina Karras and Queens, and just rocked my world. And I went on for training myself. So let's shift a little bit and just talk about the coronavirus. You know, this is about week 9 or so for most cities around the world that have either been in lockdown or where it's really affected our everyday lives. And we see how it's affected the church at large, but certainly church plants. So we'd love to hear from you, Dar. What has been your experience with COVID-19? How has it affected your church and the church plants in Malaysia?
Yeah, so it's it's been an interesting, I just never thought that, this 2020 would be such an interesting year. I remember having that conversation with you last week, and we were talking about, how churches had been affected. And just on a general note, the bigger the church that you are, maybe the more difficult it has been to adjust. We're part of a church planting network for people from or churches from different denominations, just supporting one another. So we've kind of heard from everyone, people struggling, not being able to see each other, and all of a sudden this fellowship that we used to take for granted has become so precious. So as far as affects things that have affected us, we've missed out on weddings. Weddings have to be postponed, especially since government offices have been closed. So we have a couple parishioners who are still waiting, to be able to celebrate and have their weddings. We've had babies born, and we still can't visit them because of the health cautions. We have single parishioners who are living alone, and they rely heavily on virtual groups for our daily support and connection. And we have members and neighbors who are unable to work. And we have people who are struggling to feed their families in our church. So just a lot of hurt, a lot of worries and concerns. Worship wise, like how do we continue worship? So some churches have recorded and then broadcasted, and other churches like our small church, we've just done it live via Zoom. But in sense, because the church plants seem to have been doing well, because especially if you're a church in a box, you've had to like pack up all your stuff. So we just moved from, the conference room that we were meeting in to our living room, and it just so happens that, my husband plays guitar and I sing. So we've been the worship team for the last couple of months. We're at this in the process right now of like, okay, guys, it sounds like we can start meeting a little bit. Does anybody want to come to our house so we can have different singers and guitar players? But yeah, it's not ideal, but it's been amazing to see what's become very important, and that connection has been so important. So finding ways to do that through WhatsApp conversations and Zoom conversations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really good. I mean, I've really been hearing from leaders about how, despite, I mean, there's been devastating loss. Some of us have lost, friends or loved ones as a result of this. And there's also been some redemption. We've looked at the importance of relationships. And I especially see, like you're saying, church plants that have been much more intentional in reaching out, trying to find new ways to bring people together, and are actually having deeper conversations, are having longer times of prayer, are actually being more missional in serving their neighbors as a result of this. And there's just something about seeing a smaller church plant to engage in those kinds of things, where it's harder when you have a larger organization and you've got so many more pieces to fill out. So I think this is a strategic time for church plants to help inform the larger established
Yeah.
church how to be more relational, right?
It's
All
the
right.
flexibility, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think the key word, if you were to do a word search in a church plant's files, that keyword would be transition. Like they're always transitioning one model to another. So in what way, so as you think about how COVID-19 is affecting people in just very practical ways, emotional ways, what are some ways that you've seen the church in KL respond to the needs of their communities, in particular church plants, yours and others that you know of?
That's been one of the most beautiful things that we're experiencing. It's interesting because I was asking my husband, I was like, hey, I got some questions. And because, he's got this interconnectedness with other churches, I was like, can I ask you this? And he just mentioned to me, church giving is up because, you know, there's that sense of my neighbors and that need to show love. And often it's not, we don't have that ability to come up to someone. You know, there are other ways that we have to figure out how to show love. So church giving has been up, and a lot of churches, you know, church plans as well as established churches have been very active in helping with the poor, undocumented immigrants, and refugees, whether it's through like NGOs or just through their own church ministries. Especially the established churches do have their own ministries already, but it's been wonderful to see, you know, whether it's like food collection or finding ways to work with the government policies, you know, as far as how far you can leave your home and all that stuff, to work with them to say, hey, we need to give this, you know, these essentials to needy people. So for us personally, we've seen more parishioners um, kind of being more active actually on the ground with, you know, bringing these essentials to different areas in our I mean, not in our city. And, you know, people who might not have been involved because of work, you know, and business, but in this season where everybody has to stay home, all of a sudden people have free time. So it's been beautiful to see different parishioners be involved. And definitely, I'm not sure about other churches, but our church network has definitely revised its budget. So the things that we had saved up for like outreach events and all that stuff, we've kind of turned that money and those finances to more like diaconal and mercy needs. Um, and I think it's that sense of like, okay, we see that need in front of us. We don't have to anticipate it. It's right there. We see
Right.
it in our neighbors. We see it next door. And there's that desire to have that overflow of love from God. And it's just been so beautiful to see.
Mm, I love that. Yeah. Would love to hear from viewers. Like, what are some ways that you've seen God at work, either maybe in ways that you've come alongside others, maybe in ways that others have come alongside you? I think there's the one thing that this teaches us is that we're so interconnected. I mean, the virus itself, it crosses borders, it crosses denominations, it crosses races. I mean, it affects us all. And so the phrase I keep running in my head is that I'm okay, but if you're not okay, I'm not okay. You know,
Hmm.
and so we are very much tied together. Um, so you know, as we do look around and we see suffering around us, there's a lot of fear. I know that our church is reopening soon, and I've got some fears about that. My husband's on staff, and you know, I want to just like sit him down and drill him before he walks out the door. But you know, realizing I'm not his mama, he's a grown man. You know, what he needs to do. But there, you know, but I have been going back to a lot of parakaleo tools to center my heart. You know, I'm not God. I'm not omniscient. I'm not one of the omnis. You know, I'm not omniscient, omnipresent, or omnipotent. You know, those are characteristics of God. So I can't be in all places at all times. You know, I use that when I'm thinking about how to serve my neighbors. I may not be able to do things for the whole community, but I can certainly go across the street and make sure that my sweet neighbor is okay. So, what I'm curious for you, Dara, what kind of tools have you been relying on with Parakaleo? And for those of you who don't know, Parakaleo has some memorable and visual, what we call tools, and we're going to show you one of them in a second, that we use to help us help remind us of the truth and the beauty of the gospel. So, Dara, would you share with us the tools that are really feeding your heart these days? And I'll pull it up on the screen.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the beautiful things about like being involved in Parakaleo, especially as a trainer, is that I'm constantly immersed in all of these tools. So it just kind of keeps them in my heart and, you know, in my mind all the time. But the one that I've been going to constantly, and we actually ended up doing a webinar on it last month here in Asia Pacific, I did with Utako from Japan, was the voices and verdicts.
Mm-hmm.
And that was actually the first tool that I grabbed when I just gotten back from Bangkok from a doing an intensive in there, and got home like 3 days before we closed down the country. And
Wow.
all the borders went down and everyone had to stay home. And I hadn't thought about, the virus that much. I knew it was there, but to all of a sudden be confronted with the seriousness of what was going on, it really paralyzed me, and especially paralyzed me as a pastor's wife, because then I had this sense of, I need to do something. What do I need to do? And wait, what do other people want me to do?
Mhm.
And I ended up just wanting to hunker down, actually, and just not WhatsApp anybody, not contact anybody. And at the same time, I could like see the faces of my elders' wives saying, why haven't you reached out? Why haven't you thought of a program or a ministry for us to work out during this time? And anyways, what I ended up doing is I ended up putting out this voices and verdicts. So if you can see, there's it's like, is it a bullhorn? Is that what it's called?
Yes.
Okay, a bullhorn,
Yeah.
where you have
Yeah. Mhm.
we have voices going in, and usually those voices can come from our past story, or maybe they come from the voices, real or imagined, from different people. And so those might be the voices, and then there's voices of what do they say.
Mm.
And so I ended up just kind of writing down some of the things I felt, what I felt like it was somehow my elder's wife was saying this, or somehow my husband was saying this, somehow, my parishioners were saying this. And I kind of also wrote down, why aren't you doing anything?
Mm.
What's your responsibility? And I just wrote down also what I felt and what I was hearing. I am insecure. I am unliked. I'm alone. I'm selfish because I only want to reach out for my own sake, because I do want to reach out, but I don't want to serve others. I just want to cling to someone. And I'm unloving, which is another thing that I heard, from an imaginary voice. And the way that we taught it in the webinar is like, okay, so what does it look like for us to see that cross between us and all those words, and those people, those voices, and those words, those verdicts that come out? What does it look like to hear Jesus's voice in the midst of that? So yeah, I just wrote down these truths. I am loved. I'm safe. I'm in a relationship with my Father God. Jesus is everything I can't be. He cares for others. He is their rescue.
Yes.
He works through me, despite me, without me, above me, beyond me, and I'm safe in his will. And just being able to write down Jesus's verdicts, Jesus's voice in me, was just allowed me to go, okay, if this is true. And then I wrote down, what does active rest look like for me? And all of a sudden I had choices, choices A or B. And if you want to pull that one up too, that's totally fine. This idea of living under the verdict. If I have the Father's smile, then what could it be? I could start, a online, was a Zoom group with the ladies, or I don't have to. I could just reach out individually.
Mm.
Um, One thing I actually wrote down is like just serving my family and feeding them. That's a good choice. Washing clothes. Um, I ended up, another choice was just volunteering my Zoom account for a Bible study that I hadn't been involved in, because I didn't have time for it and it was just too far away. But all of a sudden, hey, let's continue meeting. So I'm like, hey, I'd love to facilitate this. And I've gotten to know a couple women from my church that I never would have been able to if I hadn't been curious, actually. So it came from like this fear of man
Mhm.
to, okay, out of the overflow of what my verdict is, the smile of my Father, what are the choices? What are the freedoms I have?
Mm.
And just gave me a new curiosity. So I tend to pull that one out very, very easily nowadays, because there are a lot of choices that we end up having, especially within ministry, especially when the need comes calling, So what does it look like for me to live under the smile of the Father, and then make that choice, whatever
Yes.
it is, knowing that I have a smile.
Mm. So good, Dara. Thank you so much for sharing that. That so much of that resonates with me as well. You know, just being hit with this and wanting to rush and be the savior and do all the things, or wanting to retreat and just be self-protective and guarding self. But to when we remember that we have God's smile over us, not because of what we do, but because of who He is, because of His infinite love for
Yeah.
us, then that means that we can both confront our sin and confront our own fear and selfishness and savior mentality. Like, we can be honest about that because we're so loved by Him. But we can also move forward and make a choice that doesn't rely on our abilities but relies on His Spirit. So for those of you
And
viewing, if you've done a Parakaleo training or you've been exposed to these things, like, what's your favorite tool? What's the tool that you've been running to in this season, or now that you're thinking about it, would like to? Would you just share that with some of your sisters as an encouragement? So speaking of encouragement, Dar, we're about at the end of our interview together. That went so fast. What
woo,
words of encouragement? What words of encouragement would you share with other women?
that is a really good question. And just knowing just how much of an impact just having these gospel tools have been on my life, and just how God has brought me forth, as a pastor's wife and a church planter's wife. There's so much I could say, right? So I did take some time to write things down. So just two takeaways that have been a huge, which were a paradigm shift for me, and just kind of has allowed me to take each step of faith um, in this journey in church planting and pastoring alongside my husband. Number one is God uses you as you are in whatever season you may be in. And I didn't feel prepared at all coming into church planting. And yet I was exactly where I needed to be to encounter Jesus, on a daily basis, even in my fears, and to also experience healing and having other people kind of minister to me. So God uses you as you are, whatever season you may be in. And the second one, which is definitely something that I've experienced in the last 5 some years, He often calls you to lead from a place of weakness. And it's not fun.
Mm-hmm.
So I do remember like being in my small car, having a major panic attack, and having women who I had been actually um, working through Parakaleo tools and training for elders and deacons' wives, they were in the car, squeezed in, and just reading Bible verses to me. And I remember thinking, this is not a good place. This is not a place of strength. But it ended up that in that place of weakness, God was teaching them something, and He was teaching me something. So it's not fun when He calls you to lead from a place of weakness, but it's a precious opportunity to experience His ability to work above you, beyond you, through you, despite you, and even without you.
Mm,
So,
I love that. Can you tell us about your yellow scarf around your neck?
ah, so yellow scarf, actually, I was introduced to this through Parakaleo, the yellow scarf in particular. But it's interesting that for, wow, about 6 years plus, I actually spent my life like this. And I wore my hair covered for a long time as just a comfort of knowing that Jesus covers me,
Mm.
um, even when, and He draws me to Himself, even when I am too depressed and too broken to come to Him. I'm still safe. And so I wore scarves for years, head covering. And I remember going to Parakaleo, and they introduced the yellow scarf in the left turn, right turn, I think it was. And it was from the story that from Slumdog Millionaire where the girl wears yellow and she's waiting for rescue. And so Tammy was saying, what does it look like for us to wear yellow and wait for our rescue? And I was like, oh, that's so beautiful. I never thought about wearing yellow, but now it's my color.
I
So
didn't know. Oh wow. I knew about the yellow, the color yellow. I didn't know it was from that movie though. So that makes so much more
yeah,
sense. That's
yeah.
beautiful.
So I,
Mm.
I, I, I use it. It's still a comfort to me. I don't cover my hair anymore, um, and I don't even always wear scarves now. I've kind of transitioned from wearing scarves to having tattoos, to more permanent. But that said, it's just a reminder of Christ covering me as I wait for Him wait for rescue. Yeah.
Love it. Thank you so much, Dar. I'm personally so encouraged. That's why I love doing these Facebook Lives, because as we're in this Zoom, like I'm getting encouraged, like my heart is getting fed. So thank you so much, sister. So just in closing, I just thank you to all of you that were here with us today. Feel free as we're closing up to just put in the comments anything that you heard that was an encouragement to you, because that encourages us. And I want to invite you to come alongside us as we come alongside women like Dar. And we just want to ask if you would pray about becoming a monthly partner with Parakaleo, especially if you've been a part of a training in the past, or if you've been, or perhaps you're a husband you've seen the transformation in your wife, or in your friend. Would you think about being a partner? It doesn't have to be much. It could be like $10, $15 a month. And it's just as a way of you showing your support with us so that we can walk alongside. Everything that we do with Parakaleo is for the good of women in church planning. And we do this by the partnership of donors like you. So you can go to our website, just click on the donate button, and you can set up a monthly gift or a one-time gift, however you want to do it. And if you enjoyed our time together, would you consider coming back today at lunchtime? We have 2 more interviews to go. At 1 p.m. Eastern Time, we're interviewing Maina Koela from South Africa and Megan May from Washington, D.C. And then this evening at, I think it's 8 p.m. Eastern, we're interviewing Ruth Garza through her translator, Amy Robertson. So hope to see you all there. Thank you again, Dar. I know we're going to be talking soon. And everyone else, have a great day and see you soon.
Thank you. See
Bye-bye.
you.